17 September 1944, 06:12 hours. Camp Concordia, Kansas. The train brakes scream like an animal being killed. Inside a dark freight car, men in field gray sit shoulder to shoulder on bare planks, boots touching boots, knees pressed into ribs. The air smells of old sweat, damp wool, and the sour bite of fear that no one admits. A German Gefreiter, barely 20, keeps his eyes on the crack of light between the wooden boards. The crack widens. A shout in English. Metal clanks. Locks snap. The door rolls open, and sunlight hits them like a slap. For a second, nobody moves. Then the American guards appear. Clean uniforms, polished helmets, rifles held without strain. Not nervous, not hungry, not desperate. Their faces are calm, almost bored. One of the Germans blinks hard, trying to make sense of the world outside. Flat land, endless sky, a wind that smells like grass and open earth. No ruins, no smoke, no cratered roads. This isn't Europe. A sergeant barks something. The prisoners stumble down onto the platform. Some are thin enough that their trousers hang like sacks. Some have bandaged hands. One man's boots are wrapped in wire because the soles are gone. They stand in a line, swaying slightly, like men who have forgotten what it feels like to be steady. An American medic walks along the row, eyes sharp, not cruel. He stops at an older German, Unteroffizier, late 30s, cheeks hollow, eyes sunken. The medic says something softly. The German doesn't understand the words, but he understands the tone. Not hatred, not revenge, routine. A clipboard, a quick inspection, a nod. Then the march begins. Not far, just across the yard. And that's when they smell it. Not latrines, not diesel fumes. Food. Warm food. It drifts across the camp like a ghost. The prisoners' heads turn before they can stop themselves. Their bodies react faster than discipline, faster than pride. The smell is impossible. Fat sizzling on a griddle, coffee, bread. The younger Gefreiter swallows, throat tightening. He hasn't smelled coffee like that since 1941. A wooden building comes into view, a mess hall, and through the open doorway they see something that makes several men stop walking. Tables, real tables, and on them stacked trays, white steam rising. The Unteroffizier whispers without meaning to, "Gott im Himmel." An American guard steps closer, sensing the hesitation. His voice is firm. "Keep moving." But the German isn't staring at the guard. He's staring at the plates, because on the first tray he sees is a heap of yellow eggs. Not powdered, not watery, eggs. And beside them, thick slices of meat, and baskets of bread that looked like they came from a bakery, not a ration depot. The prisoners step inside. The smell hits them full force. Some men go pale. Some men smile, then immediately stop, as if smiling is a crime. The Gefreiter's hands shake as he reaches for a tray, and then he sees the final detail. On every table, in metal pitchers, milk. As much as you want. For a moment he forgets the war. For a moment he forgets Germany. For a moment he forgets that he is a prisoner. Then, at the far end of the hall, he notices something that makes his stomach drop. A German prisoner already eating, calmly, casually, looks up and speaks one sentence. A sentence that changes everything.
The German prisoner at the far end of the mess hall chews slowly, as if he's afraid the food might vanish if he rushes it. He looks up at the new arrivals and says in a flat voice that carries like a rifle shot, "Don't eat too fast, they'll bring more." For a second, no one moves. The words don't land like comfort. They land like insanity. Because the men coming off the train have lived on the edge of starvation for months, sometimes years. They have watched bread shrink into thinner slices, watched butter disappear, watched meat become a rumor. They have learned the rules of hunger. Eat fast, eat now, because tomorrow may be nothing. But the man's face doesn't show panic. It shows something worse, certainty. The young Gefreiter grips his tray. His knuckles go white. Across from him, the Unteroffizier sits down slowly, eyes fixed on the food like it's a trap. The eggs glisten under the light. The bread is still warm. A black liquid sits in a cup. Coffee. Not chicory, not burnt grain. Coffee. One of the prisoners whispers, barely audible, "Vergiftet? Poisoned?" No one answers, because no one wants to say it out loud. That would make it real. That would make them cowards. That would make them fools. So they do what soldiers do. They test. A thin man, his collar hanging loose around his neck, breaks off a piece of bread and raises it to his mouth. His hands tremble so badly the bread shakes. He bites, chews, swallows. His eyes close, and for a moment the mess hall is silent except for the sound of chewing. Dozens of German soldiers chewing like men who have forgotten how. Then the thin man exhales. Not a word, just a breath, and it spreads through the room like permission. Forks begin to scrape, cups are lifted, men lean forward over their trays like they're shielding the food from artillery. The young Gefreiter takes his first bite of egg. It is soft, hot, real. The taste hits him so hard it's almost painful. His throat tightens. He forces himself to chew. For a second, he sees his mother's kitchen in Bavaria, a tablecloth, a stove, morning light, a life that feels like another person's memory. He swallows quickly, eyes stinging. Across the table, the Unteroffizier eats with slow discipline. He keeps his back straight, as if posture can protect dignity. But his eyes betray him. They keep flicking to the meat. The meat is thick, not ration thin, not boiled gray, fried. One of the men mutters, half joking, half terrified, "This is for Americans, not for prisoners." The Unteroffizier finally speaks, voice low. "They want us fat, so we work." A few nod. It's the only explanation that makes sense. But the camp isn't a labor camp. There are no chimneys, no whips, no dogs, just order, just fences, just guards who look, well, fed. Then something happens that pushes the scene from strange into unreal. A U.S. Army cook walks out with a tray of desserts. Not for officers, not for visitors, for them. The cook is broad-shouldered, wearing a stained apron. He doesn't look at the prisoners like they're enemies. He looks at them like mouths to be fed, nothing more, nothing less. He sets down the tray. On it are slices of cake, actual cake, white frosting, dark sponge. A few men stare as if they're looking at a miracle. The young Gefreiter's mind races. Cake means flour. Flour means wheat. Wheat means trains. Trains means fuel. Fuel means oil. Oil means industry. Industry means... The Unteroffizier watches him, reading his face. "You see it too," the older man says quietly. The Gefreiter doesn't answer, because his mouth is full of food, and because the thought forming in his head is too big to swallow. At the far end of the hall, an American guard leans against the wall, chewing gum, relaxed. He is not afraid of these Germans, not even a little. And in that moment, the prisoners begin to understand something far terrifying than the fences. This isn't kindness. This is confidence. Then, as the meal continues, a new sound cuts through the mess hall. Laughter. German laughter. Soft at first, disbelieving, then louder, because the cook comes back out with more trays, more eggs, more meat, more bread, as if the supply is endless, as if scarcity is a foreign concept. The young Gefreiter stares at the steaming food, and the first truly dangerous question enters his mind. If America can feed its prisoners like this, what does it feed its soldiers?
That afternoon, the prisoners are marched through the camp in neat columns, not shoved, not beaten, marched. They pass barracks painted a clean, dull brown, with screened windows and wooden steps. The ground is hard-packed dirt, swept clean. The fences are tall and layered with barbed wire, but the wire looks almost ceremonial, like a boundary, not a threat. The young Gefreiter keeps expecting the next cruelty to appear. It never does. Instead, an American corporal with a cigarette between his fingers walks beside the column, counting heads. His uniform is crisp. His boots look new. His face is sun-browned and calm. The corporal glances at the Germans as if they are weather, not hated, not feared, just handled. The prisoners are assigned to a barracks. Inside, there are bunks with mattresses, not straw sacks, mattresses, blankets folded at the foot, a stove for winter, a sink. The Gefreiter runs his fingers along the edge of the bed frame like he's touching contraband. Then he sees something pinned on the wall, a poster in German. It reads, "You are safe here. Obey the rules, work if assigned. You will be fed." The words are blunt, not friendly, but the message is clear. Safe, fed. The Unteroffizier stands behind him, eyes narrowed. "They print posters in German," he murmurs. "Of course," another man says. "They have printers." But the Unteroffizier doesn't mean the printer. He means the implication. A country that can afford to translate posters for enemy prisoners is a country drowning in resources. Later, the Gefreiter is sent with a small group to a processing building. They sit at desks. They're asked names, ranks, units. A U.S. Army clerk writes without looking up. He's young, maybe 19, and his hands move quickly. He has a pen that doesn't scratch like a cheap German pencil. He has paper that doesn't feel like rationed newspaper. The Gefreiter watches the clerk's desk. 2 pencils, a stapler, a stack of forms, and beside it, a metal ashtray. Not made from scrap, manufactured. The Gefreiter has seen that ashtray before, in photographs of American offices. The clerk stamps a document and slides it forward. Next. No drama, no anger, just a machine processing human beings. After processing, they're taken outside again, and that is when the camp opens up in a way the Germans did not expect. Beyond the fences, they can see the world. Not ruins, not burned-out villages, not civilians pushing carts through rubble. They see roads with cars, trucks, farm fields stretching to the horizon, and in the distance, a train moves across the flat land like a black snake, a freight train, long, very long, boxcar after boxcar after boxcar. The Gefreiter counts without meaning to. 20, 30, 40. He stops at 50 and loses track. In Germany, trains are shorter now. They're bombed, broken, starved of coal, starved of spare parts. Here, the train moves smoothly, unbothered by war. The Unteroffizier stands beside him. His eyes follow the train. Then he says something that sounds like a confession. "When I left for the Eastern Front, we thought America was soft." The Gefreiter looks at him. The older man's voice is quiet, almost ashamed. "We thought they were businessmen, jazz, factories that make refrigerators, men who can't fight." He pauses. Then he looks back at the camp, at the clean buildings, at the guards, at the food, at the order. "And now we sit in Kansas," he says, "eating eggs like it is Sunday." That night, the prisoners are given a small package: soap, toothpaste, a razor, a towel. The Gefreiter holds the razor in his hand, turning it over. Steel. New. not a dull blade reused until it tears skin. He looks around the barracks. Men are washing, shaving, cleaning their uniforms. Some are smiling, some are silent, staring at the floor as if joy is dangerous. And then the radio begins. Not a German radio, an American loudspeaker system mounted outside. A voice in English announces the evening news. Most of the prisoners don't understand the words, but they understand the tone. Confident, controlled. The voice mentions places the Gefreiter has heard in briefings: France, Belgium, the Ardennes. Then a number, a production number. The Gefreiter doesn't catch it fully, but the Unteroffizier does. His head snaps up. "What did he say?" the Gefreiter whispers in the dim light. He said, "This month alone, America built more aircraft than we have fuel to fly." The words hang in the air. A few men laugh nervously. Someone says, "Impossible." But nobody truly believes that anymore, because they have eaten cake, because they have seen the train, because they have been processed like paperwork. The Gefreiter lies on his bunk that night, staring at the ceiling. He tries to remember the speeches, the promises, the certainty. He tries to remember the propaganda posters showing starving Americans collapsing under their own greed. And he thinks of the eggs, the milk, the coffee, the endless trays. He turns his head. The Unteroffizier is awake too, staring into the darkness. "You feel it," the older man says. It isn't a question. The Gefreiter swallows. "Yes." The Unteroffizier's voice becomes a whisper. "We are not prisoners in America. We are witnesses." Then outside a truck engine starts, a heavy engine, diesel, smooth, and the Gefreiter realizes something that makes his stomach go cold. America is not straining. America is not desperate for survival. America is simply producing. And if this is what it looks like when America feeds its enemies, then what does it look like when America decides to destroy you?
October 1944. The Kansas wind has sharpened. It carries dust, cold, and the smell of distant harvest. Inside the camp, life settles into routine with a kind of quiet cruelty of its own. Not beatings, not starvation, but something more disorienting. Normalcy. The prisoners wake to a whistle. They line up. They count. They eat. And every morning the breakfast returns like a threat disguised as comfort. Eggs, bread, meat, coffee. Not every day the same, but always enough, always more than enough. The young Gefreiter stops looking for the trick. Instead, he starts looking for the source, because soldiers are trained to think in supply lines. A meal is never just a meal. A meal is trucks, railroads, fuel, warehouses, factories, men who work while others sleep. And here in America, the supply line feels endless. One afternoon, the camp commander posts a notice. A work detail is needed, volunteers to help with the local harvest under guard. In Germany, work detail means punishment. Here, the notice includes something else: pay. The Germans read it twice. Some laugh, some curse. The Unteroffizier stares at the paper like it's written in code. "They pay prisoners," he says, voice flat. The Gefreiter shrugs, trying to act unimpressed, but his mind is racing. Pay means money. Money means the Americans expect prisoners to buy things. Buy what? The answer comes days later when they are marched to a small camp canteen. It's not large, just a room with shelves. But what sits on those shelves makes the men stop like they've hit a wall. Chocolate, cigarettes, toothbrushes, writing paper, socks, shaving cream, and cans, actual cans of fruit. A German soldier reaches for a tin of peaches as if it might explode. He turns it over, reading the label. English words, bright colors, a date, fresh, not ersatz, not substitute, real peaches in syrup. The Gefreiter feels his mouth go dry. He thinks of home, of letters describing Finn soup, bombed streets, cold apartments, and children growing too fast because there isn't enough food. He looks at the shelves again, and he understands the canteen isn't just a store, it's a message. America can feed you, clothe you, and still sell you luxuries inside a prison. Outside the fence, the harvest work begins. The Germans are marched to a nearby farm under guard, and there, standing in a field under a huge sky, they see America not as a rumor, but as a landscape. The farm is vast, not a few small plots, a sea of crops. Tractors move through it like steel animals, loud, powerful, unstoppable. The Gefreiter watches a combine chew through grain, spitting out processed harvest as if the machine is eating the earth. He has never seen anything like it. In Germany, a tractor is rare now. Fuel is precious. Parts are missing. Men and horses do the work. Here, the tractor runs without hesitation. The American farmer, an older man in a hat, talks casually with the guard while the machine works. The farmer laughs. The guard laughs back. War feels far away. The Gefreiter wipes sweat from his brow and realizes something else. The Americans guarding them are not exhausted, not hollow-eyed, not malnourished. They look like men who slept in beds, men who ate well, men who expect tomorrow to be even better than today. At lunch, the prisoners sit on the ground and open their packed meals, sandwiches, fruit, a thermos of coffee. The Unteroffizier bites into an apple and freezes. The apple is crisp, sweet. He stares at it as if it's a weapon. Then he says quietly, almost to himself, "In Germany, my daughter writes that apples are only for the sick." The Gefreiter doesn't know what to say, so he says nothing. Later, back in camp, a new group of prisoners arrives. These men are different. Not Wehrmacht, not Luftwaffe. They wear black uniforms, SS. The atmosphere changes immediately. The barracks feel colder. The SS prisoners walk stiffly, eyes hard, jaws clenched. They don't stare at the food with wonder. They stare at it with suspicion. One of them, a tall man with a scar, speaks loudly in German so everyone hears. "Do not be fooled. This is propaganda. They want us weak." The Unteroffizier watches him with quiet contempt. Weak? From eggs? From bread? From milk? The scarred SS man sits down and eats anyway, fast, hungry, like everyone else. That night, tension builds. The SS men whisper in corners. They speak of loyalty, of the Führer, of victory still possible. The older Wehrmacht prisoners listen, silent, because something has shifted inside them. Not surrender, not betrayal, something worse, certainty. The Gefreiter lies on his bunk, staring at the ceiling again. He thinks of the train he saw in September. He thinks of the farm machinery. He thinks of the canteen shelves. He thinks of the calm American guards. And he realizes the food isn't the point. The food is just the surface. Under it is a structure so vast, so organized, so confident that it can afford to be humane. And then, one evening, the camp loudspeaker announces something new. The voice is clear, firm, and even without understanding every word, the Germans recognize the names. Auchin, the Siegfried Line, the Western Front. The Gefreiter looks at the Unteroffizier. The older man's face is pale. "What is it?" he whispers. The Unteroffizier swallows. They've entered Germany, he says. The words hit the barracks like a bomb. For a moment, nobody breathes. Then the SS man with the scar laughs. A sharp, ugly sound. Good, he says. Let them come. They will bleed. But the Unteroffizier doesn't laugh. He stares at the wooden wall, at the clean American-built boards, and, in a voice barely above a whisper, he says the most dangerous sentence of all. If they can feed us like this here, he pauses, imagine what they can do to us there.
December 1944. The camp wakes under a hard white frost. The Kansas sky is clean and bright, the kind of winter morning that looks harmless until the wind cuts through wool and into bone. Inside the barracks, the stove crackles. Men pull on their coats, breath fogs in the air. And somewhere beyond the fence, America keeps moving. Trucks roll down distant roads. Trains pass like clockwork. The prisoners line up for breakfast. The routine has become so normal that it almost feels like a betrayal. Eggs again. Pancakes this time. Syrup. Coffee. A slice of sausage. The young Gefreiter sits down with his tray and realizes something unsettling. He is no longer shocked by the food. He expects it. That realization makes him feel sick, because expectation is what the war has stolen from him. In Germany, nobody expects anything anymore. Not warmth, not bread, not tomorrow. But here, in a prison camp, he has started to expect breakfast. Across the table, the Unteroffizier eats quietly. His hair is growing out. His cheeks have filled slightly. His eyes are still sharp, but now there's something behind them that wasn't there in September. Resignation. Not the resignation of defeat, the resignation of understanding. A loudspeaker crackles outside. The English voice begins the morning news. This time, the Germans catch more words than before. Months of hearing the same language has made it easier. They know the rhythm now. Then they hear a phrase that makes heads lift. Ardennes. German counterattack. Battle of the Bulge. The scarred SS man sits up, eyes bright for the first time in weeks. He smiles. He looks around at the barracks as if he's about to deliver a sermon. You hear that? He says. We strike them. We break them. The Führer still has teeth. A few SS men nod, hungry for hope. The Gefreiter feels his stomach tighten, because he knows what this means. He knows what the Germans are trying to do. One last massive blow in the West, a gamble to split the Allies, capture fuel, force negotiation. He remembers hearing about it in briefings, a miracle offensive, a final throw of the dice. The Unteroffizier chews slowly, eyes down. Then he sets his fork on the tray. The sound is small, but in the silence it lands like a gunshot. He looks at the SS man. You think this changes anything? He asks. The SS man's smile hardens. It changes everything, he says. It proves we can still win. The Unteroffizier's voice stays calm. No, he says, it proves we are desperate. A murmur ripples through the room. The SS man leans forward. You sound like a defeatist. The Unteroffizier doesn't flinch. He gestures at the tray between them. At home, he says, my wife writes that they boil turnips until the water tastes like dirt. My daughter writes that the bombs shake the walls every night. My neighbor's boy is 14 and has been given a rifle. He pauses. Then he points at the pancakes. And here, in a prison, they give us syrup. The SS man's jaw tightens. You think food wins wars? The Unteroffizier's eyes lift, and for the first time the Gefreiter sees something like anger. Food is fuel, the Unteroffizier says. Fuel is trucks. Trucks are artillery. Artillery is shells. Shells is steel. Steel is factories. Factories are electricity. Electricity is coal.
coal is railroads. His voice grows quieter, and America has all of it. The SS man scoffs. We have courage. The Unteroffizier nods once. Yes, he says, and courage is what you spend when you have nothing else. Silence. The SS man looks away, but his hands tremble slightly as he lifts his coffee, because even he knows the truth. He has eaten the same breakfast. He has seen the same trains. He has watched the same American guards chewing gum, like the war is background noise. Days pass. The news from the Ardennes shifts. At first, the Germans hear that the attack is successful. They hear about American units surrounded. They hear about snow, confusion, chaos. The SS men grin. Then, slowly, the tone changes. The English voice begins using different words. Held, reinforcements, air support, German fuel shortages. Fuel shortages. The Gefreiter's heart sinks because he understands that phrase like a wound. German tanks stalled, German trucks abandoned, German columns frozen in forests because there is no gasoline, no diesel, no supply. The Unteroffizier listens to the broadcast and doesn't look surprised. He looks tired. One evening, the camp commander allows a group of prisoners to watch an English newsreel. A projector hums in a hall. The lights dim. The screen flickers, and suddenly the prisoners see it. Not propaganda posters, not rumors, film. American factories, assembly lines, rows of aircraft fuselages sliding forward like they're being born, women riveting wings, men welding hull plates, engines being tested, tanks rolling off lines, ships launching into water like giants waking up. The Germans sit frozen, because the scale isn't just big, it's obscene. It's not war production, it's industrial domination. The Gefreiter feels his chest tighten. He realizes this isn't even the whole American economy. This is only the part pointed at Germany. The film shows Liberty ships launching, one after another. The narrator's voice boasts of production rates. The Gefreiter doesn't understand every number, but he doesn't need to. The visual is enough. A river of steel, a flood of machines, a nation that has turned manufacturing into a weapon. When the lights come back on, the hall stays silent. Men blink as if waking from a nightmare. The scarred SS man stands up abruptly. He forces a laugh. "Tricks," he says, "film tricks." But his voice cracks slightly, and no one laughs with him. Later that night, in the barracks, the Gefreiter sits on his bunk with a letter in his hand. It arrived through the Red Cross. The paper is thin. The handwriting is shaky. His mother writes, "The city is burning again. We have no coal. We have no meat. Your sister is sick. We pray you are alive." The Gefreiter reads it twice. Then he folds it carefully and stares at the wall. Across the room, the Unteroffizier sits with his own letter. He doesn't speak for a long time. Then he says quietly, "They can feed us because they have more than enough." The Gefreiter nods. The Unteroffizier continues. "They can feed in France, Italy, the Pacific, and still feed German prisoners in Kansas." He pauses. "And we," he says, voice breaking just slightly, "cannot feed Germany." The Gefreiter's throat tightens. He wants to argue. He wants to say something about honor, about sacrifice, about victory still possible. But the words won't come, because the truth is now inside him like a splinter, unremovable. The war, he realizes, was never going to be decided by who had the braver soldiers. It was going to be decided by who could keep feeding, fueling, and replacing everything forever. And America can. In the darkness, the SS man whispers to his comrades about loyalty, about fighting to the end, about miracle weapons. No one answers him, not because they've become traitors, because they've become realists. The Gefreiter lies down, eyes open.
He listens to the winter wind outside. He listens to the distant sound of a train horn, long, low, confident. And he understands the most humiliating truth of all. Germany did not lose because its soldiers were weak. Germany lost because its enemy was too large to starve, too rich to break, and too organized to stop. The next morning breakfast will come again, and the prisoners will eat, not as a kindness, as proof. As the war continues to collapse and ocean away, the men in this camp will carry the same unbearable thought. If America can do this for its enemies, then what chance did Germany ever have?